let's start this off hot. I wanted to bring you on here too, but we have the juicy seal debate. But
Glenn, the investigative journalist.
Can you hear me better? Yeah. So I saw there was a spat. Should you public spat? Should you and Billy Corgan?
I don't know.
Refers you as a politicker.
Yeah,
I know this to be a fact because I know that on occasions you and Conan have had private conversations trying to get me kicked off the show, and where you would take my place. I know.
And
I know you're the type
person. Both of those things tie into the same thing, Glenn, which is I'm in business with the audience, right? Like I'm just thinking of what's best for the audience always.
So what happened with that?
I thought it was, to be honest, I thought it was a bit of a one-way spat, if I'm totally honest, because it seemed a bit unprovoked, seemed a bit out of the blue. Most people that seems to be the prevailing opinion from at least from the people I've been exposed to, where it just seems like it all came a little bit out of left field. But who knows?
Well, let me ask you this. If Billy Corgan is referring to you as a politicker.
Yeah, that's a curious one.
Well, no, because it's very obvious to me. Who is the person that is stooging? Who is the person stooging to Billy? That's the question here.
No, that is an interesting. That is an interesting.
Right. Who put that in Billy's head?
Situation. Well, look, he's got a couple of people there who everywhere he goes, somehow they end up showing up. Like ringworm. But I think it's curious to me anyway. I don't, but it's a curious thing to be accused of politicking by the person who ultimately makes all the decisions and arbitrarily can, change anything he wants, but it being his company. I can understand like a wrestler or even someone else in the office accusing somebody of that, but it doesn't seem to make a lot of sense to me. I don't understand. I don't know how an owner can suggest that a talent.
Well, of course, Nick, if you're politicking for, let's just say, and I'm not saying that this is it because she doesn't need you to do it. Why doesn't Mickie James use more? Why aren't you doing more with Mickie James? That could be considered politicking. But my question is, I know that's not it, but my question is, do you guys have a philosophical difference, a difference of visions, of difference of where the company should be, or a vision of booking, or a vision of using talent, or is there some of those are intertwined?
Well, look, I don't want to harp on this point because it's like,
I'm not. To be honest, I'm just trying to get a little.
I'll be totally. It's keeping it 100. Right. I really don't like discussing this kind of stuff publicly, and I thought it was, and I was like, to me, that was more of a disappointment to me, right? That was a conversation that was taken public. Right. But look, you've joked about this on the show before. Like I've had input,
right?
Always, right? But that's a bit of a different situation to like.
Well, as well, you have good ideas, and you've been in the business for a while, and you've been successful. I mean, you're a smart guy. That,
but it's more.
I mean, if I have you in my locker room, I'm definitely going to you for help.
Yeah, but in this case, it's like it's even more sort of apparent because like this company was such a unique situation because when it started, it was like just two people,
right?
So it's kind of like. Yeah, do I feel like I have a sort of a certain amount of myself wrapped up in the brand? Yeah, of course I do. And I like that was the thing that I loved about it. Like that's what that was the thing that I thought was that made me more trustworthy was the fact that I had sort of you talk about sweat equity,
right?
Like I didn't get paid for any of those 10 pounds of gold things or in fact, I didn't sign a contract. I didn't get a dime from Billy for like the first, 7 or 8 months of being the NWA and being NWA champion. My money was coming from third-party promoters.
Not only that, Nick, you've basically been the heart and soul of that company, starting off with your stuff with Cody Rhodes to the Trevor Murdoch and everything in between.
And so, look, we do have philosophical differences. I think but I just want to make this point clear. Like we've always had those.
Right. It's
not like something that's suddenly come out of the blue. Like, oh wait, I can't. You don't feel like this is the a good idea, and I do, and like we've always had that. I think the problem is that that's where all the other people come into play, right? Because if you're someone who's like me, first priority is to the audience and to like, you love the business, and deep down, like, you can't bring yourself to go along with something or pretend to like something, or, you know, pretend to endorse something that you don't sort of fully believe.
Right.
You know, then if you're surrounded by people who are just happy to be there and are, you know, really sort of just focused on making one person happy.
Right.
Yeah. Then I suppose over time that contrast might start to look a bit like, oh, this guy again, you know, this guy. But I don't know. I think
let me tell you,
down
Nick,
to a sensitivity issue for me, because like,
Nick,
I've always said the same thing. I'll just let me finish this. I've always said the same thing. Like, I've had to deal with this. Every wrestler has to, who's been around to a certain level. Like, you're going to go, hey, I'm going to plead my case and sort of give my opinion on something. But ultimately, when the hammer comes down and you say, okay, we're doing this, I'm going to go out there and deliver it. Like, and that's always been my approach. And that's never happened. I've never refused to do something. Never, like, gone into business myself, you know, or anything like that. Like, and I know tons of people who have. Some of them are in the NWA. And I'm sitting there going, wait, so because on a couple of occasions I had to say, I told you so, like, you're going to have a big hissy fit, like, whatever, man. And it just, I just kind of threw my hands up and said, okay, well, hey, do what you think is right, you know, or do what you want, I guess, because I don't know if those two are necessarily the same thing, but I'll do whatever I can to make sure that the audience gets their money's worth when you decide what position you're going to put me in. Like,
well, ultimately, this is the problem with it's not. I'm going to say it's the problem. For years now, there's been like an unwritten contract that when you're in this business and you're sharing a locker room, and we now, like, all the performers, all the people in charge, everybody has access to social media, and where one person can have a conversation with somebody, a private conversation, or, you know, we're basically, it's like, you know, there is no closed door on the business anymore. You know, the door is cracked open.
right.
You know, there's not like there's very little chance that a lot of conversations are going to remain private.
Yeah.
But everybody there's this unwritten contract where everybody should understand that there is going to be things that are said and stuff, and things are going to become public. And it's the way that the perception of the way you handle them in the public sphere develops as the way the fans perceive that person is as a person.
Absolutely.
So when Billy says something Nick Aldis is a politicker, because maybe you've had a couple conversations with guys back there that maybe you thought his creative vision, like I don't think he should be using this guy and stuff. And then that person tells somebody, then a tweet goes out there, but then all of a sudden you become a politicker. But it's like, we take a very small fraction of the Nick Aldis persona, and we've taken this out, and like now we use it to kind of like to forward my position. I'm kind of having to I get to bury Nick Aldis. You know what I'm saying?
It's a lot. I mean, I get what you're saying, and you're right in a lot of what you're saying. But I think that the meat of the matter is that anyone who has sort of a proven effect on the sort of commercial aspect of the show, right? Like, anyone who's got some kind of tangible evidence to being, you know, important to the show, as in, if you're on the show, like, it makes a difference in terms of how many people are going to watch it. I think anyone who gets to that level does so by having somewhat of an opinion and an input and a collaboration, you know, with like what got them there. In my case, the difference was like, I set a very sort of high bar, I guess, a very sort of certain precedent in terms of like how much involvement a talent has, like, on a lot of stuff, like extracurricular stuff. Like, I've helped out with production. You guys, know that I was, I produced stuff for the company. I was involved in meetings. I secured sponsorships. So it was like, I didn't do any of that because I wanted influence. I did that because like it was necessary, because it was a startup company and there was like, it was all hands on deck. And I was on a salary and I appreciated it. So it was like, I saw my particular role as really more like that, like a team captain, like all hands on deck, help get this company off the ground and help turn it into something that can hopefully be profitable and be sustainable so that a bunch of other wrestlers can have a job. And that's the irony of like the guys that come in after and then start stirring up like you alluded to, is that like, where were you when when the team was like 3 of us, right? Like, where were you when I was like freezing my nuts off in Belfast, to go out and defend the title against someone, with the flu? Like, you weren't doing shit. You were sitting at home waiting for the phone to ring. And now that there's actually something to latch onto, you're like, hey, can I get booked? And now you show up and the first thing you do is core with like the guys who actually make a difference and like roll up their sleeves. Like, it's easy to point to me because I was the world champion. I don't know why he had to tell people this, but it was like, well, he gets paid the most. Like, he's whatever. Like, so it's easy for people to believe that stuff if you say about me. But there's a whole crew of us, as in like, and Conan, like, if you've been to the dressing room at the NWA, which guys I'm talking about. There's the guys who get it, and then there's the guys who are lucky to be there, right? And it's like, I promise you, every single one of the guys who gets it, like, they're all having these discussions too. It's just I'm the only one who had the courage to say like, hey, look, man, some of this stuff, I don't think it's heading in the right direction, and I'm concerned about the company.
Well,
That's
plus
it.
you worked around a lot, like you and Kevin.
I
Nash
earned the right to say that.
We've been in WCW 95 through 2001 was one of the most political atmospheres in the history of professional wrestling, right? And like we see, like there's this thing that when you get to a certain level, you have the power to negotiate your position and navigate your position in politics and stuff. You know what I'm saying? So it's like I
do, but I don't want to come off as pretentious.
But no, what I'm saying is
we're not on the same. We're not even talking in the same ballpark, right? Like we're talking about. In my case, the only reason that I, get so passionate.
Bro, let me just say this, Nick. Did you see the ESPN, which was incredible? It was like a 7-part series on Derek Jeter, the captain.
No, but it's funny because someone was just talking to me about this earlier.
Okay, it was phenomenal. You know how ESPN does,
Yeah.
And basically, you remind me of Derek Jeter, that company guy, the guy that he was the captain of the team and he had the respect of everybody and he led by example. And, and if you happen to be a producer, you were a producer, and if they needed you to be on commentating, you're on commentating. If they needed you to scout talent. I've been in a lot of startups, from Lucha Underground to AAA to TNA, a whole bunch of places.
Right.
And I will tell you this, that every time I've been in a position of power, there's always been somebody that came in after that tried to get in between me and the boss 100%. And put in their head because they want my spot.
That's 100%. That's 100% what you're looking at here.
Yeah.
The only difference is that for me, I'm just looking at it going like, hey, I ain't gonna sell for it. Like,
right.
If you're gonna let that happen, then go for it. Good luck. But like, the proof is in the pudding.
Right.
Because again, like, I don't want to be pretentious and compare this to
but you're not being
something like
pretentious.
WCW. But I understand how people might hear it and be like, wait a minute, he's comparing himself to this guy. Like, that's not what I'm doing.
Right.
Because the difference is that we're not talking about a multi-million-dollar company where like, everyone's getting guaranteed huge $1 million contracts or high 6-figure contracts. And so they're all just with each other for, political reasons or to, because of their egos and stuff.
Right.
My input is based solely on like, I want the company to sell tickets,
right?
And I want people to watch the show, right? And I'm paying attention to the audience because they're my audience too. So I'm going like, man, some of this stuff ain't landing, some of like, and I don't, and some of the people that have come into the company, I'm like, you guys aren't team players, right? Like, you're coming in, specifically to further your own, to do something that benefits you and you alone and doesn't benefit the brand and doesn't benefit everybody else on the team.
And I can't believe that Billy, because when I have spoken to me, I don't know, you don't know people really, but very intelligent and like he's on the ball. But I I love having people like you because you don't want, and you've heard this show enough for you to hear this saying, which is true. I never learned anything from somebody that agreed with everything I had to say.
Right.
And like in AAA, there's kind of like a little joke. If you don't want to know the truth, don't ask Conan. Right. But if you want to know the truth, ask Conan. So like my boss, sometimes he'll be like, yo, what do you think of this? And he's like bracing for shock because he knows there's no way I'm going to agree with everything he says if I think he's wrong. And he appreciates that. But I don't do it with malice. And he understands that. I do because I love the company. It's just like when I bury, the United States government. It's not because I hate my country. It's because I'm pissed off there. But
right.
And we used to have real leaders and now we don't.
That's exactly how I feel about any of this stuff. Yeah. And like the only reason that I speak with so much passion is because I care deeply about this company succeeding. Right. And the fact that
you're the face of the company. You have been since the beginning.
Right. And it's like well documented that I had opportunities to move on and I stayed put. Like I worked without a contract. I gave money back from my salary during COVID, during lockdown, because I was like, you know what, if this helps get a few of the boys a few paydays to do on Zoom or whatever, then cool. Like,
okay, let me ask you this question.
To be part of the team.
Let me ask you this question. You're obviously still working there, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you think you could sit down with him and fix this?
It's the only. I mean, it seems to be the only way to do it. We'll figure it out. I mean, or we won't.
This is funny.
That's it. That's the thing. It's like I'm not trying to be aloof about it.
Right.
But it's like. We'll either figure it out or we won't.
Well, I think I'm a
professional.
I'm honest, and it's probably a little bit of stress on you for stuff like this. But I find this stuff. This is kind of this does generate like.
I know you find it fascinating. I find it fascinating.
Controversy creates cat.
I find it fascinating when I hear about it in other places. It's like even when I know the players involved. But, I'm like, I'm still going like, oh man, I wonder what's going on there.
Ultimately, though, this is like what you said is perfect example. When I got out of the wrestling business, I got into the club business, right? I've worked at the Sapphire Gentlemen's Club for years. And Raven has a great line. And I see this, and he used to talk about this in wrestling, but I see it in my job. When we hire the new guys, and the best way to describe it are the new guys that come in and they see the landscape of who's not the made guys, but who's well liked by the staff, the managers, like who are their guys. And what they try to do is they try to chop your legs off to make themselves feel taller.
Sure.
And that is in every business.
Every business, yes.
Like you can just like wrestling stuff is like, and ultimately it's how do you and ultimately the thing was people like that ultimately expose themselves.
Yes.
And you are able to convince the people that they're trying to minimize you and everything. They say this is what they're doing because they're not. Very rarely are they good at it.
Ultimately,
so it's like and they ultimately just they come and go.
All you have to do is just take a look at the roster and just figure out like which personalities have come in the last few months, and then correlate that with like, oh, I wonder why now there's some weird energy and dissension between the owner and the top guy.
Right.
It doesn't take a rocket science. And look, it ain't rocket science. And honestly, with this particular person, it's not even an original story. It's it's been the same everywhere. And it's just like, I'm at this point where I'm like, you know what? I'm comfortable enough in my business and I'm confident enough in my own ability that I'm like, I'm going to keep plying my trade. I'm going to keep doing the best I can to be a professional. And I'm going to make sure that anytime somebody buys a ticket to see Nick Aldis, they get their money's worth. And I'll make sure that I deliver whatever you want on television.
The rumors that I've heard, the stories that you forced Mickie into retirement. Would you like to
I tell you one thing. I begged her not to send that tweet.
Right.
Because I was like, you're ribbing yourself. You're ribbing yourself. But there you go.
What tweet was this? Because I missed it, Nick.
It was a tweet where she alluded to being done with wrestling, and of course, ever since it's like
at what age
now, Mickie?
Yeah,
42.
Yeah, making very good money and not having
to work that much. It wasn't even a when it was. My rule with Mickie is always this: if she says to me, "Can I tweet this?" the answer is already no. Right.
She knows the answer is going to be no. That's why she asks you, right?
You're ribbing yourself because I said, regardless of where you actually stand and where this is going, you're going to be inundated with questions and people are going to keep bombarding. We were at the gym the other day, and some guy said, "Hey, I thought you retired." I was like, "Well, they don't say I didn't warn you."
Yeah, right.
Here we go.
No, you got to tell them, Mick, you can't retire at 42 because we got to sell our longevity supplements. You got to wait till like at least you're 45 or 46, right? So we need a benchmark, right?
Yeah, we got to take Prevagen out of the
Nick,
mind.
let me just say this. I hope you can sit down, squash your beef, fix the for the betterment of the company, because you're the MVP in my eyes over there, and you know me, I keep it 100.
Well, I'm going to be there on Sunday.
I'd rather bury you. Let me just say that.
Sunday the 28th, it'll be me and Flip Gordon one-on-one. We'll tear the house down. I promise you that.
He's great. Flip Gordon, not only is a great wrestler, he's a cool-ass guy.
Yeah, man. And I'm very, very psyched and that's a good example of like where I'll give Billy his props. He was like, "Okay, who do you want to work with?" I said, "Flip." Right.
Yeah.
You know, so
Flip's a good guy, man. I'm glad he's starting to work some dates with us. You will be soon. As a matter of fact, we're supposed to be doing something together, I think, as you know, right? Next year. Yeah.
Well, I remember mentioning Conan had talked about bringing Nick into Mexico last year.
Right.
And the year before that.
Right.
And the year before that.
Right.
And the year before
It's been a long journey.
So soon, right?
Ever since my last tour of Mexico, which was 2015.
Right, yeah. Bringing you back. Right.
It's just,
even my boss, without me bringing you up, when we were talking to, the NWA about doing something together, which you know about, all right? So he was like, "Who's in the NWA?" I go, "Well, look at the roster and look." And then he remembered you. And he was like, yeah, and he was like, "Oh, this guy goes, we need to bring him in." I go, "Yeah, bro. You don't know how many times I've promised this and I haven't. I think when I finally do, he might kiss me or something."
It's going to be a big parade and it's going to come in. Then you'll really see the politicking. Hey, you want to see some politicking? Wait till I make my return to Mexico in 6 years.
That's tremendous. That is tremendous. I wouldn't expect anything less from you, you bum. But all right. So plug your legacy subs and anything else you got going, my friend.
LegacySubs.com, K100. You guys are very close to hitting a milestone in the amount of sales you've generated for us. So once we get there, I'll let you know.
Who else? Do any of the wrestling podcasts advertise Legacy Subs?
I work with Conrad and his team, so I dip in and out of different ones on his network, depending on like what openings they've got and stuff like that.
But our listeners are. So we're like the number one podcast that you do business off of, huh?
Yes.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Because I think this shows you that I will say this then. Of all the podcasts out there, you got the Mark podcast, the wrestling podcast, like for the guys in the business stuff and everything. I would say based on the fact that Legacy Subs is doing so well that our podcast listeners might be the most fit.
Oh, they've got certainly. It seems like your listeners have the most desire to better themselves.
Right. Interesting.
And we have a lot of betterment products. Like we have, for shaving your nuts and
yeah, Manscaped. They've been a good partner with me as well. I've done quite a few paid posts for Manscaped. I like Manscaped.
Right.
Or our listeners have the lowest testosterone. That's a possibility.
that could be true.
There's high. Well, they have but their levels are
not anymore. Not anymore. Not anymore with the ultimate test stack.
Right.
The thing is, and I've had. I met a couple of fans. I had a show in Dallas a couple of weeks ago, and a couple of fans there came up to me and were like, had like K100 shirts on. They're like, "Hey," and they were both like, "Hey, I tried the supplements." Well, I met a guy called Miguel in Nashville who came up to my table at StarCast, and he was a K100 guy. He's like, "Oh, I heard about the subs through K100, and I've been using them, and it's been going really well. I've got like great results." It's super rewarding. And I had a conversation with Brian Gewirtz the other day and told him he should come on the show with you guys to plug his book.
We probably have him coming in October or something like that.
Yeah, I was like, I saw he was doing the rounds with some of the wrestling shows, and I DM'd him and said, "Dude, you should if you haven't yet, you should reach out to Conan and do K100 because you'd have a great conversation. Like for one thing, and two, like their fan base are loyal and committed, and they convert. Like they actually they support the sponsors, and it's really cool."
Yeah. Well, I'm just so glad because that's the main thing I've been hearing, Nick. People will DM me and they'll say, "Hey, thanks for hooking me up with Legacy Subs. I'm going to get some more." And so,
good.
It's been a great product, and I'm glad that our listeners have been, good patrons of yours.
Yeah, they really have. All right, y'all.
All right, my friend. So, do you need to promote anything for NWA?
Sunday the 28th.
Right.
I'll be there. So if you're in St. Louis or in the St. Louis area, go to the Chase Park Plaza Hotel. Go to nwatix.com, get tickets. I'll be there night 2. Well, I'll be there night 1 as well. I just found that out on Twitter, same time as everyone else. How about that?
Okay, what's the main event? Give me the 2 main events or main and semi of night 1.
I think Camille and Taya.
Right.
I think that's the main title for night 1. I'm not sure. I could be wrong, but I think that might be the main for night 1.
Right.
Who's Taya?
Taya Valkyrie.
She was on our show.
Oh, Taya Valkyrie. This is
yeah. And then Trevor Murdoch and Tyrus, I guess, is going to be the main for night 2 for the world title. Yeah.
Okay.
But me and Flip Gordon's going to be the show repossessor.
Yeah. Go rock that, my friend.
Yeah, man.
I know you will. All right. Be cool. Be safe. Thank you very much for being on Keeping It 100. This has been the Juicy Nick seal of approval. Boom.